Poppy could be part of Experiment 1006. The enigma of Poppy still persists despite the fact that we already have the 4th installment of Poppy Playtime. The clues in the game have been firm in determining whether we can or cannot doubt her. Let's not forget those strange eyes and that suspicious attitude at the end of Chapter 2, just before boarding the train. In them, terror, horrors, and violence were hidden. Something we haven't seen in Poppy again, but that undoubtedly remains concealed. The relationship between Poppy and 1006 is becoming closer and closer in the latest events. One of the tapes reveals Poppy's confession about the day of the massacre and 1006. She makes it clear to us that she supported the cause of the rebellion, but she didn't expect that 1006 wouldn't let any experiment out into the outside world, which caused Poppy to hate him. But was this a whimsical hatred or a true hatred? Honestly, it feels like a whimsical hatred, not because 1006 had attacked her. In fact, she herself admits that 1006's reasons for not letting any experiment out are reasonable and well-founded, even though she doesn't accept them. Poppy has really behaved like a spoiled child. Think about it. If Poppy were a true enemy of 1006, wouldn't he have eliminated her already? In fact, it's very suspicious that she disappeared during the internal war between the experiments, being the one who led her own group. On top of that, she doesn't even explain why she abandoned her companions. But I'm sure it has to do with 1006. According to Poppy, 1006 was the one who put her in the box, but now we can better understand that he did this as a form of punishment or correction. Poppy couldn't let go of the idea that the experiments should go out into the outside world. So she was trying and trying and trying to do things to free them without considering the level of exposure she'd put all the child experiments in, including herself, or the massacre that could occur on the surface when they had to defend themselves from people, or even the army. 1006 has wanted to avoid this at all costs, all for the children. Or at least that's what he's made us believe. This situation could also confirm that Poppy was indeed an experiment conducted with a girl as a test subject, since 1006 shows a maternal or paternal protective instinct toward the child experiments, just like catnap. And Poppy is no exception, as long as they don't oppose his purposes. Notably, the shelter was a concentration place for child experiments, and yet 1006 didn't hesitate to destroy it, deeply hurting Dog Day for becoming Poppy's collaborators. But then I wonder, why attack the shelter and not Poppy? Why are the collaborators eliminated while Poppy is only locked up or punished like a spoiled child? It's as if 1006 is aware that she's just playing, something that's more than clear about 1006. He decides who lives and who dies. His acts of mercy aren't because someone is a child, but because they're useful to him. This was very clear with Dr. Sawyer. 1006 needed him, he was useful, and that's why he hadn't gotten rid of him. Therefore, 1006 seeks utility in those who are on his side, which makes him an interested and manipulative character to achieve his goals. I'm not a psychologist, but I think both Poppy and 1006 show signs of psychopathy in their actions. In that, they might have something in common, and it also makes me question the real reason why 1006 still keeps those children in the depths. Are they real children or just bait for the player? But before continuing, I want to challenge all those little people who watch my videos in ghost mode to subscribe and leave the word 100 in the comments so I know they've subscribed and stopped being little ghosts. Let's continue. With all this context, I can't stop thinking about the type of connection Poppy and 1006 might have. Besides being supposedly enemies but also collaborators. So something interesting happened. A theory about a comparison between Poppy and 1006 with two specific characters from the Nintendo 64 game called Conker's Bad Fur Day. In this game, there's an interesting boss called Little Girl. In short, Little Girl is a kind and friendly girl who tries to trick us into killing us. She has her distinctive doll pigtails and sometimes her voice turns demonic. I clearly didn't hesitate to compare her to Poppy, but Little Girl has a secret weapon up her sleeve, and it's the Experiment. The Experiment is a bear with a bionic arm and spider legs, which Little Girl joins or becomes part of to become one. Little Girl assures us that the Experiment is the brute force, and she's the mind that directs it, the one pulling the strings. I'll leave you a little part of the battle with this boss, which is very interesting. As we can see, Little Girl has a certain resemblance to Poppy, especially because of that demonic attitude and the flower that represents her. Music. And so Little Girl presents herself to us as the brain and eyes of the Experiment, making use of sophisticated weaponry integrated into the bionic bear itself, which, as we can see, has the same spider legs that have now been revealed for 1006, as well as its bionic arm. Music. As we can see, Little Girl gives a very specific order to the Experiment. get up, which we also hear in Poppy Playtime every time the player dies. Someone says, get up, it's not time to die, we have to keep going, ordering the player to get up just like little girl is doing. But in this case, it could be experiment 1006 itself. She also uses the word command to order, which is also a word that's been used a lot in the lore of Poppy Playtime. I command you to get up. So these are other things that make me think there's a lot of inspiration, I'd say, in Poppy Playtime based on this scene. The question is Poppy already part of Experiment 1006, or will she end up becoming part of it? How much similarity is there between Poppy, 1006, Little Girl, and the experiment? Is it just a coincidence, or are we seeing a recycled idea from Poppy Playtime? Is it possible that at some point we'll see Poppy fused with 1006 facing the player? Honestly, it would be something very terrifying if Mob Entertainment does it. Since we've already seen they know how to make grotesque and horrific designs, it would be just as many have thought that it's all Poppy's game, one the player has been playing from the start and has been set up to lose. I must say this isn't a theory I believe 100%. It just struck me as very interesting, the resemblance with these characters, confirming that 1006 also has bionic spider legs. So it wouldn't surprise me if, in Chapter 5, we see Poppy integrated into one of 1006's arms or forming part of him in some way, chasing us in a very disturbing manner. Lastly but not least, at the end of Poppy Playtime Chapter 4, 1006 reveals that all this time it was Ollie, that Ollie existed long ago but is now there forever, forming part of him. So Poppy feels betrayed since she was manipulated the whole time. However, pausing and thinking about this carefully, there's a VHS that reveals a conversation between Ollie and Poppy from when she started feeling bad about the experimentations, since it seems they experimented on Poppy over and over again, taking things out or putting things in. In this conversation, Ollie is there to comfort her in her sadness. The question is, was this the real Ollie or was it always 1006? Is it possible that 1006 used Ollie to reason with Poppy about her decision and stop her from finding ways to get what she wanted? In any case, it still seems so strange to me that 1006 takes such care of Poppy instead of eliminating her. But we already know that 1006 only cares about those who are useful to him. So let me know your theories in the comments. Apart from all this topic, I have a special question for you all. How do you want the prototype to die? Answer me in the comments and I'll share some of my own theories. Well, since the prototype is always one step ahead and seems to always know what's going on, I think it would be a great ending if we genuinely outsmart it, completely surprising it by taking advantage of its greatest strength. Even so, the player is much smarter than they seem. So far, we've just been following Poppy's orders, but now, in Chapter 5, we'll finally see how skilled they really are. Remember that in less than a day we reached the lab and defeated Huggy, Mommy, the SCs, Miss Delight, Catnap, Sawyer, Yarnaby, and Doey. That guy is the toy Doomslayer. Now there could also be a plot twist where someone sacrifices themselves to take down the prototype, and all of this drives me crazy because the only person who had those kinds of plans was the Poppy doll. However, what I'd like to see happen is some kind of explosion that takes out the prototype while we're running out of the factory with Kissy and Poppy. But unfortunately, I highly doubt any of the toys will make it out of the factory. It would also be awesome if the parts of the other toys that the prototype has attached to itself rebelled against it, self-destructing and dismantling it from the inside, so to speak. That would be epic. But even then, we need something more thrilling. Some kind of explosion in the factory happens, causing it to start collapsing. The prototype chases the player as they reach locations from previous chapters, but shorter, so the full chase doesn't last a few hours. The player reaches the scene of Harley's death and somehow injures the prototype there. I have no idea how. Similar to how when Harley died, the prototype's greatest defense fell. The player recalls the green hand before the chase from the remains found of Catnap. They charge it, and the prototype gets slightly injured but not killed, though still severely wounded, symbolizing that when Catnap died, one of the prototype's main defenses fell. We reach the train and run back to the game station. The grinder door is completely broken, so you can't use it, so the player heads back to the hole leading to a slide. The slide is now replaced with stable ground and the thing for the purple hand. The player reaches the spot where Huggy was in the main room of Chapter 1 and opens the door with the blue and red hand panels, which closes behind them. Behind that door is a Project Playtime puzzle pillar and some kind of anti-toy weapon that wasn't finished before the hour of joy. The player has to occasionally stop at the puzzle pillar to close the door if it opens, at least a little. If the door opens fully, the player dies. The toy piece inside the puzzle pillar is the final part of the weapon. The player assembles it and destroys the prototype. Then the player runs toward the factory exit. End. But I have another theory about what could happen. there's a small boss fight. Part of the fight will involve keeping the prototype away from anything that could replenish it, probably the orphans. In part, it wanted the others to improve, but also because its body is failing. Over time, it starts to break down, and the parts it stole stop responding to its will. The prototype panics and tries to consume all the remaining orphans to regain its power. Though it succeeds, this sudden shift makes it hard for it to control its body. It's practically drunk on power, literally. Then we get a chase scene where we have to escape the prototype. It follows us, but clumsily. It crashes into everything and leaves destruction in its wake. At the end of the chase, there's a massive pillar. There'll be a scene where the pillar falls on it due to the factory's damage, or it might require the player's help. The pillar crushes the prototype. It might not be fully dead, but it doesn't matter since the rest of the factory is collapsing. The player will have to do another chase, running to escape the factory as it falls apart around them. They'll reach a vent through which the player can get outside. It was an escape area for executives, with a pod for each executive. All the pod entrances except 2 are destroyed. One will be unusable, because it's already been used. We won't be able to see the name on the pod due to the damage and lack of time. We climb into the other pod and escape to the surface. Once outside, we discover there's another facility, and we vow to destroy it too to prevent this from happening again. In this scenario, Poppy doesn't become a final boss, and we might escape with her. If we do, she's seen happy to enjoy some freedom, but insists we destroy the other facility. It ends with her nervous, her eyes widening and turning black for a brief moment before returning to normal. And well, friends, that's been today's video. Leave me a like if you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one.